Good evening and welcome to Your Money in Business. I'm Jeff Salkin. We begin this week with our Smith Business Close-Up and a focus on branding presidential candidates. Joining us is Hank Boyd from the Smith School of Business, marketing professor and associate chair of the marketing department. Professor, thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
When we talk about branding presidential candidates, we have these sort of highfalutin notions of what politics ought to be, but in the trenches, this is what they're working on.
Absolutely. The name of the game is, who am I? What do I stand for? That's what brand is, your essence, your personality. And so when people hear your name or you think of a candidate, certain things you associate with that candidate right off the bat. That's what branding's all about.
But I think about branding in terms of companies and McDonald's. It applies to this sort of
Oh, absolutely. It applies to people as well. So you can take anything and brand it. And once again, the associations in memory that spring immediately for the consumer, or in this case, the voter, that's what politics is all about.
So as a marketing expert, how do you assess the branding work that's going on this year?
Well, it's been rather intriguing. We have President Barack Obama, who came in with hope and change, 2008. And you remember the euphoria of the time period. It was amazing. Now, after 4 years on the job, a lot of people are saying, well, it hasn't worked out as well as we'd hoped. We've been waiting, and when's it going to happen? The big turnaround, the big change. And so, as you know, the president has used it as a slogan, forward. So it's the argument that we're making progress, but we're not quite around that corner yet. And when it happens, it'll be a new day. And of course, on the other side, you have Governor Mitt Romney. And Governor Mitt Romney, as Mr. Fix-It, is saying, believe in America. And so he's trying to get across there is the American exceptionalism. We can bring this country back. Very much like Ronald Reagan, it's morning in America.
How tough is it to move a brand? So the Obama brand 4 years ago became a national, maybe global phenomenon. Over time, as you say, maybe it's tarnished slightly. But in the confined space of a presidential campaign with a few weeks to go, how much can you really affect it?
It's very difficult to move the needle. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's an accumulation of associations you make over the years. So at this point, I would say you're trying to reach out to those undecided voters. People are already in your camp. They'll be in your camp come Election Day. But what do you do? What do you have to say to sway that audience out there saying, well, I'm on the fence, I'm not sure? Is it the debate? Is it an accumulation of all these ads that are going out there? And as you know, it's getting more and more negative. We're at the point of true mudslinging at this juncture.
So in the case of Romney trying to build a brand, the Obama brand is known to 100% of Americans, one would hope. Romney, far less. So after the primaries, there's this rush to define him. His campaign, the Obama campaign may have done a better job of painting on that blank canvas, would you say?
Absolutely. They took advantage of that. So in the primary, the Republican primary, the Obama camp went out of their way to say, okay, here is Mitt Romney, here's what he stands for. And of course, after the debate, that was his golden shining moment to say, hey, I'm a new guy. This is the real Mitt Romney who's standing here. Now, of course, we're going to have a few more series of debates, and the president, after what was a rocky night, he will come back and say, here's what I'm about, here are the planks of my platform, and here's why you need to stay with the Democratic leadership that we have thus far.
As we're taping this, we've seen the first presidential debate and the vice presidential debate. The movement in the polls has been extraordinary after the first presidential debate. From a branding standpoint, did Romney move the needle just in that 190-minute period?
I have to say he did. And I say that in a way that it was fascinating to look at it. Let's say that you were not a U.S. citizen. You don't know anything about America. And you're looking at, you've come to a bar and there is the debate on TV. You might ascertain that, wait a minute, that guy, Mitt Romney, he's the president, right? Because he's a commanding presence, the way he came across that I'm a leader, this is what I stand for, he was very strong. And that being the case, the president seemed a little reluctant. He was very more professorial, and at sometimes a bit aloof, and that worked against him. So I think in retrospect, he'll say, we weren't going to do that again. So I'm pretty sure he'll be on the offensive going forward.
How would you advise voters sift through all of this high-tech, intense marketing, branding work that's going on?
Very difficult thing to do. I'd say hit multiple sources. Make sure, it's now that we have social media, go to the candidate's website, find out more about the candidate in terms of background, what they stand for. If you get a chance, read their plan. There are various points that you need to understand. And then once you feel that you're truly informed, you got to make the call. At the end of the day, it's still a popularity contest. I vote for the person who I'm most comfortable with. And that person who I feel represents me and my needs.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, everybody looks at issues, and there's plenty of websites out there with how the candidates stand on this issue or that issue, but it's really a gut feeling for a lot of people, and maybe that's why the branding's so important.
Absolutely. Like in last night's debates with the vice president, Joe Biden went out of his way to say, I'm one of you. I'm a regular guy. I came up from Scranton. I came over the hard scrabble existence, but here I am today. I'm one of the people. I'm going to do right by the middle class. That message resonates with voters, and that's what it's all about.
I want to spend a minute on the idea of branding from the standpoint of business people, individuals watching who have a personal brand. Your company, no matter what it is, you've got a brand, at least in the eyes of your customers, your employees. Is that something that everybody ought to spend a little bit of time thinking about?
From a business standpoint, absolutely. The brand has become absolutely essential. Look at Apple. Apple, in a span of 10 years, has gone from you're kind of different, you're off the beaten path, but you really like your thing or your piece of technology, to this is the technology. This is cool. This is hip. This is design. And it's all captured by that. So when you think he's no longer with us, Steve Jobs, he did a brilliant job at building the brand of what is Apple today.
And now they have to defend it. They have to build on it. They've got to live up to really high expectations.
Yes, they do.
Of coming out with game-changing equipment every year or so.
It's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, but that's what it's all about. So when we think of Apple, we think of innovation. We think of what next will they come up with where they'll change the world.
And we think about individuals having brands, not just Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, but individual business people. At a high level, they'll pay somebody to work on their personal brand through social media and that sort of thing. Is that money well spent?
Well, I think it always is money well spent, because in the end, the consumer buys a product. But with the product, beyond the physicality, there is that essence of what is the brand. So if a CEO has gone out of his or her way to say, this is what I'm about, and all our products carry this, that's something you will consume with the actual physical product.
Back to the presidential stuff. Historically, is there anything that stands out in your mind of just great presidential branding? Or the flip side of that, anybody really messed it up? Yeah.
Okay, I think the classic, we got to go back to Ronald Reagan. It's Morning in America. We were going through some very tough times, and when he stepped into the presidency, he was saying, I believe America's best days are still ahead. He talked about the shining city on the hill, and he firmly believed that. And we as a crowd followed with the president. So once he set the tone, and everyone thought we could do it, we were empowered, and sure enough, we did come around that corner.
And we all want to buy into optimism, right? I mean, that's a powerful thing.
Oh, it is very powerful. And that's why Hope and Change in 2008 resonated with so many voters, that it's a new day. If we think back to the time period when it was Nixon versus Kennedy, Kennedy captured some of that same magic. The era of Camelot is here. And so once again, the nation rose up and everyone said, these are great times.
Good stuff. Professor Hank Boyd from the Smith School of Business, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.